Blitzscaling. Book by Reid, Hoffman. Chapter 3: Risky Business Pays Off. As a business owner, what's the number one thing you don't want to do, no matter what industry you're in? Pretty much every business can agree that you never want to drop your prices too low. Why? Because if your prices are too low, you won't even be able to cover your own costs, let alone turn a profit. Of course, for any business owner, that sounds like the worst possible scenario. But what if you did it intentionally? What if you deliberately set your prices so low that there was no way they would ever cover your costs? That's exactly what the wildly profitable Uber does, and in so doing they've created a service that most of us use on a daily basis. So, how does it work for them? And why is it viable? One reason Uber is so successful is that they've internalized the most important aspect of blitzscaling: speed. They understand that if you want to strike fast and generate rapid growth, doing it quickly is key. So, by swooping in with prices so low that it's impossible to undercut them, Uber is able to take its market by storm and rake in profit hand over fist. But as you've probably already noticed, blitzscaling isn't a simplistic one-size-fits-all model that can be applied to any company anywhere. Instead, it's about making blitzscaling work for you. And in Uber's case, that means coming in and hard fast with insanely low prices, and the knowledge that they have a backup stash of startup capital behind them. They can afford to undercut their competitors, and maybe even lose money in the process, because at the end of the day, they know they'll still be able to cover costs. Obviously, that isn't true for every startup. So, if you want to employ Uber's business model, there's nothing stopping you, as long as you have that kind of investment capital to fall back on. And if you are able to recreate this strategy, then you should know that it can be highly profitable in two ways. For starters, blitzscaling in this fashion allows you to dominate a new market at hyperspeed. To put this in the context of our earlier coffee shop example, let's imagine that you were trying to expand to the US and the UK, and you decided to apply this business model. So, you start by striking quickly and opening stores in both countries. But you don't just open new stores, you open with prices so low that there's no way another coffee shop can undercut you. For the sake of corporate suicide, let's imagine that you decide to sell every latte on the menu for just $1, every single drink on your menu, even, or perhaps especially, the super fancy stuff that runs closer to $7 at Starbucks is now only $1 if customers buy from you. Now, even if you sell 1 million lattes in your first week, that kind of growth isn't sustainable, and you won't be able to survive financially. Eventually, you're going to struggle to divide that profit between supplies and payroll and overhead. But if you have a few $1 million in investment capital to rely on, then you can go full steam ahead with this model, knowing that you might lose a bit here and there. But you'll also conquer the market in a new country. Is that risky? No doubt. But is it worth it? Most people would say no doubt to this question as well. The trick, of course, is getting investors to see that. Another advantage of this model is something called first scaler advantage. This is another perk of swooping in and dominating your market, and you can think of it in terms of that old adage, the early bird gets the worm, or even as survival of the fittest. First scaler advantage comes into play when you've conquered your market and made yourself an almost impenetrable force. If we think about our coffee shop example, you can see that even Starbucks, with its history of established success, would struggle to compete with someone who's selling the best lattes in town for $1. And if you were able to sustain this type of growth over a period of a few years, it's possible that you might even drive the Starbucks in your area out of business because they simply can't compete. That's the beauty of first scaler advantage. Once you effectively dominate the market and plant your flag, everything naturally flows in your favor.